county by county across the United States just how much of this country went from blue to red?
Yeah, there's about 4 blue counties now.
It was surprising to even me. But, look, let's hear from a true political expert, Matt Lauer.
Oh, a heavyweight.
Yeah, he had Chris Christie on the morning after the election, and he's taken this so well. Listen to how he's talking.
Well, it's a shame
to the
there's
governor
no video
of New Jersey.
Well, it's a shame that there's no video because the look on his face, Matt Lauer was angry, livid.
He was past angry. You'll be able to hear it in his voice.
So the world changes now in Washington. Republicans have control of the House and Senate for the first time in 8 years. You know what that means. In January, voters are going to say, what are you going to do with the power? Opposing the president's policy is not a policy. Specifically, what can Republicans do with this power? Tell me specifically one area where you would like this new Republican majority to compromise, real compromise with President Obama.
What? Excuse me, Matt? Excuse me? Opposing President Obama's policies is not a policy? For starters, yes, Matt. That is exactly what it is. Most definitely a policy in and of itself. The president's policies put us in the shape that we're in right now. We're having according to the president, we're going through an economic recovery that no American can feel
unless you happen to be well connected at the Fed or on Wall Street, in which case you're doing fantastic. If you were one of the chief executives of Solyndra, hey, man, times are good.
Yeah.
Now, the rest of us, which is more than 5 people, by the way. I mean, I just want to, make it clear that, there's more than 5 people across the country who cannot afford to invest in anything that Wall Street has to offer. The rest of us are kind of hurting out here. And it is because of Obamacare and all the jobs that Obamacare has cost all of us
it's
across
because
this country.
There's more people on food stamps. More Americans are on food stamps now than ever in the history of the program. We have more men and women that have completely left the workforce to the point that they don't even show up on unemployment statistics anymore. They've completely withdrawn from the workforce. Something like 9 million people have completely withdrawn. Completely withdrawn
and
from the
workforce.
workforce.
Most of them are drawing disability checks. And maybe they have a right to because they've been paying into it, number one, all their working lives. Number 2, they're drawing disability checks because they're depressed. Why are they depressed? Because they can't find a job.
Look,
and guess which party has been running the country for the last 6 years?
Well, and he wants to say, how are you going to compromise? Give me specifics on how you're going to compromise with President Obama. Oh, you mean like the Democrats that's had control of the Senate all this time have compromised with Republicans? When the Republicans over there in the House have sent over 300 pieces of legislation over to the Senate, and Harry Reid has refused to even let them be debated? You mean that kind of compromise? Is that what you're talking about, Matt?
Much less voted on, not even allowing them up for debate. So, obviously, they didn't even get voted on.
Yeah. But now, look, not everybody was sad. Rachel Maddow looked really hard to find bright spots in all of this. She looked really, really hard, and she found some bright spots. The dealing with like a few states voted to lift their minimum wage, and that points to a serious victory for Democrat policies, and it points to a serious demand for raising the federal minimum wage. There's no way that a state raising its minimum wage and the federal government raising the minimum wage could be two totally different things.
Well, I got a question. In those states that voted to raise the minimum wage, just out of curiosity, how many of those were red?
Most of them, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Just listen to Rachel.
A lot happened last night. Last night, voters in the deep, deep red state of Nebraska, they had the chance to vote on whether they wanted to raise the minimum wage in that state. They voted yes by an 18-point margin in Nebraska. In Alaska, they voted to raise the minimum wage there by a 38-point margin. It was on the ballot in Arkansas, too, where it won by 32 points. Even in South Dakota, voters chose to raise the minimum wage, and they chose that option by a double-digit margin. There were two states where personhood was on the ballot last night. This is the pretty radical anti-abortion legislation that is favored by a whole bunch of the new Republican senators who were elected last night. Joni Ernst in Iowa, Cory Gardner in Colorado, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, Tom Cotton in Arkansas, Steve Daines in Montana. They all support personhood, this radical anti-abortion approach which would ban all abortion in every circumstance and some popular forms of contraception as well. But voters last night were asked directly in two states if they wanted to vote for a personhood law statewide. In North Dakota, it lost by 28 points. In Colorado, the numbers are still coming in, but so far it is losing by 30 points. Personhood lost by a huge margin in both states where people had the chance to vote on it last night. Last night, voters in two states and in Washington, D.C. also had to vote to legalize marijuana for recreational use, like Colorado and did in 2012 in Washington State. In Oregon last night, they voted on it as well. They voted to legalize pot in Oregon, and it won by 12 points. In Alaska, they voted on it there as well, and it won by 4 points. In Washington, D.C., legalizing pot won by 37 points. In 4 places last night, there was a measure on the ballot to give people paid sick leave from work. It was on the ballot statewide in Massachusetts. It was also on the ballot in Oakland, California, and in Trenton, New Jersey, and in Montclair, New Jersey. It passed in all 4 of those places. When Rhode Island elected Gina Raimondo to be their new governor last night, it was the first time ever that the state of Rhode Island had elected a woman governor, and it was the first time that Rhode Island had elected a Democratic governor in 2 decades. In Massachusetts, when the congressional results came in last night, Massachusetts hit 100 straight congressional elections in which the state has elected Democrats.
Bless her heart. She was trying so hard to find some silver linings and to say that, the results of this midterm election was an overwhelming victory for Democrat policies everywhere in those small places. 4 states voted to raise the minimum wage. Oh gosh, man! If that's not a nationwide mandate, I don't know what is. And
wait, that's 4 out of 8 states.
Yeah.
Court by math.
Now look, I in truth, I have not read that personhood amendment that was being put forth there. I don't know that it was, banning abortions of all types, or under all circumstances and things like that.
Well, I did actually. I read one of the amendments, and I'll tell you this: I'm not so sure that the state deciding who is and who is not a person. The language in the bills, as far as I could see, weren't as much pro-life as they were yet again offering up some power to the government that I'm not sure that it should have. Because if you, instead of defining life, they're defining who is and who is not a person. And I did not have enough time to do enough research to so that I can say definitively. But I will say that the language that I read made me a little uneasy, because the language, again, it allows the government to decide who is and who is not a person. And I think when you go down that road, that you're opening the door for the government to say, well, maybe somebody with Down syndrome might not actually count as a person. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Instead of saying human life, they're defining personhood. And like I said, I think those bills could be written in a way that could be exclusively pro-life. But I have an issue with the concept of personhood because
that sounds a little too much like eugenics to me.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. And most of them they had to do with abortion and when you can kill and when you cannot kill. But again, I think approaching it through personhood as a status is risky, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And so
I'd have to agree on that, but I have to strongly disagree with Rachel in that the Democrats won anything last night. Unless, of course, you count those pot legislation bills. I guess that is exclusively a Democrat thing. I don't know. I hadn't really heard any Republicans talking about it one way or the other, except maybe that Republican governor down there in Florida. That just signed a bill to okay it for medicinal uses that she didn't want to talk about because that was a Republican governor that did that.
I can tell you this, though. Every single Republican candidate that won, without exception, ran against Obamacare. Without exception.
That's one thing they all had in common. 100% of them had in common, and they don't want to talk about that.
See, but you know why? Because, and you do know why. It's because that's the president's legacy legislation there. Is Obamacare.
And there's no way the people of the United States could possibly, be unhappy with the president completely dismantling our health care system. And, there's no way the American people could be unhappy with not being able to see the doctor that they've been seeing their whole life, or, hospitals that they prefer to go to no longer accept the insurance that they have. There's no way the American people could possibly have been unhappy with that at all.
Well, I'd love to sit here and tell everybody that our president took it like a champ. That he said, the people have spoken, and I'm going to start compromising.
Don't put words in his mouth. Don't put words in his mouth, because I happen to have exactly what the president said.
Well, let's hear it. Let's see how he took it.
Okay.
Today I had a chance to speak with John Boehner and congratulated Mitch McConnell on becoming the next Senate Majority Leader. And I told them both that I look forward to finishing up this Congress's business and then working together for the next 2 years to advance America's business. And I very much appreciated Leader McConnell's words last night about the prospect of working together to deliver for the American people. On Friday, I look forward to hosting the entire Republican and Democratic leadership at the White House to chart a new course forward. Obviously, Republicans had a good night, and they deserve credit for running good campaigns. Beyond that, I'll leave it to all of you and the professional pundits to pick through yesterday's results. What stands out to me, though, is that the American people a message, one that they've sent for several elections now. They expect the people they elect to work as hard as they do. They expect us to focus on their ambitions and not ours. They want us to get the job done. All of us in both parties have a responsibility to address that sentiment. Still, as president, I have a unique responsibility to try and make this town work. So to everyone who voted, I want you to know that I hear you. To the 2/3 of voters who chose not to participate in the process yesterday, I hear you too.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to stop you right there, Mr. President.
What exactly does that mean?